Welcome to our YouTube video series on environmental oil. My name is Christopher Neufeld of Neufeld Legal. And in this introductory YouTube video, we're going to be discussing what the objectives of environmental oil YouTube video series is. And that's to promote a discussion and advancement of the oil industry with environmentalists. And the reason we've undertaken this is there seems to be a polarization across all areas of discussion these days, where people are getting so heavily polarized and going what would seem to be very extreme positions on both sides. And even though there is credence, lots of credence with respect to what each side theoretically is pursuing, oftentimes what we're seeing is that theory, ambition, perception, polarization has pushed things to such an extreme that we're losing sight of the ability to achieve more advancement and more success that would be possible through finding a middle ground, and to finding ways that both sides can come together and get real advancement, real success moving forward. And that really should be where the objective is. Because part of what I see, unfortunately, is that we're focusing so much on extremes and not looking at the larger, more global, more holistic picture, even on the environmentalist side. And why do I say that? Well, I say that because having lived in other countries in what is known as the quote-unquote third world, you see where the real environmental damage is taking place, where the real problems are occurring, and where the real fixes need to be done. And I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be fixes done in the quote-unquote first world. What I'm saying is that you have to look at it so that you're achieving those fixes both in the first world and then have application in the third world. But if you don't have a system where you can achieve those fixes in the first world and you instead attempt to simply cut off stuff, the possibility for getting real achievements that can be applied to the third world are going to be stunted. And why do I say that? The reason I say that is because in the first world, you could get a lot of funding, a lot of financing, a lot of commitment, not only from industry, but from government, from academia, and from non-governmental organizations, and even from people and environmentalists out there, to make advancements that then can be applied not only in the first world, but in the third world, and the second world, naturally. But if you're going to simply say, we're going to cut off stuff in the West, while allowing non-Western countries to operate on their own devices, what we're going to be doing is facilitating and perpetuating disasters that should not be arising and occurring. Those disasters should be prevented. And how do you prevent them? By increasing the amount of spending and the amount of application of new technologies and new efficiencies. That is what needs to be done. But you can't do that if you aren't able to create stuff to apply to those countries. If you can't promote stuff that is more efficient, that is more environmentally sound. So that is the purpose of environmental oil, to try to promote a more environmental approach to oil production, oil systems, oil delivery, that if achieved in the first world, as so to speak, can then be replicated and applied to other countries where they don't necessarily have the money or the impetus to put this in place. Because, let's just take a step back for a moment. Now, when I lived in India, what you noticed is there is so much, absolutely so much environmental damage being done as a product of there not being enough resources and funding being put in to industrial operations and commercial operations. So you have bus lines that are operating. Bus lines like you never would see in North America. And why is that? That is because they operate at a different level and they do not have the controls. But are they going to be changing their bus lines internally? That's a very slow process. Instead, what you want to be doing is facilitating improvements in your own country so it can be replicated and sold off to other countries and promoted through funding from NGOs, funding from the United Nations, funding from first world governments who are pushing for environmental stuff. But that's only possible if those achievements are attained in the first world. So this is what the objective of this YouTube video series is to do. It's to create this emphasis on promoting environmental oil. Not simply ethical oil, but environmental oil. It's much like the idea of blood diamonds. There's a lot of places where inappropriate stuff goes on. And the way it has to be addressed is by taking action at home. But the action is not to close off an entire industry. That's the wrong approach because it's not going to do what you really want to do on the global level. What you instead need to do is to promote environmental practices at home. And that is what is being done in the industry, but what it has to be done, the focus should be on increasing those environmental activities and not necessarily shutting down industries. Because by shutting down industries in one place, you're not going to achieve improvements in other places. Instead, you have to push for the industries in places like Canada, the United States, and Europe to create new systems that are environmentally operative better, and then allow them to be replicated through economies of scale so as to better produce environmental achievements in those countries. And that is what the focus needs to be, and that is what the focus of our YouTube video series is. So what we actually do hope for is we hope for your commentary so that we can engage in a dialogue and we can promote that dialogue to find ways that we can influence others in understanding where we think the environmental position should go forward with the oil industry. Because it's not our belief that simply shutting down in one place is going to create environmental salvation for the entire world. Clearly it is not. Salvation is not achieved through saying we're just going to expunge the oil industry in one province or one country. Especially where that particular area is already at one of the higher levels in environmental production. Instead, it is our belief, and it should be considered, that environmental advancements need to have application the world over. And that is the only way that we're going to move forward, that we're going to be able to promote a better environmental world, that we're going to really have what a lot of people on the polar opposites should really be looking for, is to have a better world, not a better singular country, a more polarized country, we got to be looking at having a better environmental world across the whole board. And that means having technology, having advancements that are coming up in one country that promote environmental ethical oil, and then that can be replicated in other countries which are causing the greatest amount of damage to the environment. That is what the objective, in our opinion, should be. And that is what we want to be achieving through this YouTube video series, and working with yourself on creating that dialogue and that promotion so that the world moves in that direction. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we look forward to producing more YouTube videos to advance that dialogue, advance that communication, and look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.